Hello everyone, I hope the sound is good today. I am at the ocean. The sun is out, but it's sort of overcast. Nevertheless, we're here and we're going to read Evelyn Underhill's book. I'm going to read Evelyn Underhill's book on mysticism. It's the studying the nature and development of spiritual consciousness. And I'm a psychologist for the past 20 plus years, and so I will sometimes just stop and say some insights if they're important. I actually didn't think this was anywhere out there, but I found it. And how I found it was so funny because I found it in one of my tweets from 2017. It's on LibriVox and it's 30 something hours. I think it's about that. But anyway, she keeps saying LibriVox, and she doesn't say anything. But, you know, I put it out there because I want whatever's going to be best for you. But sometimes we don't know what's best for us. We think our mind does, and something else is best. So anyway, all right. Welcome. This is the book. It's from 1910. Evelyn Underhill influenced C.S. Lewis. And I think Tolkien and Charles Williams was in their group with them of the Inklings. And anyway, I'll continue on where we are. I have a playlist, so you can start there. Totally, you can start here. I trust that it came to you today for a reason. And so just begin where we are and enjoy the setting. I like having something going on in the background. So we're on the chapter on mysticism and symbolism. It looks like we'll finish that chapter today. All right. So she was talking about the Philosopher's Stone, the real one, not just the one in Harry Potter. Anyway. If we could find it, let me read the sentence before. Upon the spiritual plane also they held that the divine idea is always aiming at spiritual gold, divine humanity, the new man, citizen of the transcendental world, and, quote, natural man as we ordinarily know him, is a lower metal, silver at best, a departure from the, quote, plan, who yet bears within himself, if we could find it, the spark or seed of absolute perfection. The tincture which makes gold. The smattering I have of the Philosopher's Stone, says Sir Thomas Browne, which is something more than the perfect exaltation of gold, hath taught me a great deal of divinity, and instructed my belief how that immortal spirit and incorruptible substance of my soul may lie obscure and sleep a while within this house of flesh. End quote. This incorruptible substance is man's goldness, his perfect principle. For the highest mineral virtue resides in man, says Albertus Magnus, and gold may be found everywhere. Hence, the prosecution of a spiritual chemistry is a proper part of the true Hermetic science. And so, just like Jesus says, you must be born again. You know, she's talking about how this is expressed in all sorts of symbols over time. And many different mystic writers, a lot Christian, are speaking of this and this alchemy that needs to take place. That's not just people assume they're already that, you know. And it's like, I just read that this morning. I was looking up a Greek word and it said, you know, it was in Philippians 2, I think. It was like this paradox that you hold the two tensions together of work out your faith with fear and trembling. And then it says, the next verse is, for it is God who works in you to act and to will according to his design, or something like this. And so we must go on this path. Jesus didn't call it the narrow path for no reason. It's a narrow path, and he said few find it. So anyway, I just invite you to take it seriously. It's part of why I'm reading this book for us, you know. because I myself take it seriously. The art of the alchemist, whether spiritual or physical, consists in completing the work of perfection, bringing forth and making dominant, as it were, the latent goldness, which lies obscure in metal or man. The ideal adept of alchemy was therefore an auxiliary of the eternal goodness. By his search for the noble tincture, which should restore an imperfect world, he became a partner in the business of creation, assisting the cosmic plan. You know, my ways are not your ways. My ways are higher than your ways. There is a greater cosmic plan, and all of our momentary problems and everything that we can get so caught up in, the ebb and flow of life, can sometimes distract us and sometimes teach us about what our calling is within this cosmic plan and how we're meant to fulfill that, you know. The proper art of the spiritual alchemist, with whom alone we are here concerned, was the production of the spiritual and only valid tincture or philosopher's stone, the mystic seed of transcendental life, which should invade, tinge, and wholly transmute the imperfect self into spiritual gold. This was no fancy of 17th century allegorists, but an idea familiar to many of the oldest writers upon alchemy, whose quest was truly a spiritual search into the deepest secrets of the soul, is proved by the words which bring to an end the first part of the antique, quote, golden treatise upon the making of the stone, end quote, sometimes attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. This, O son, says that remarkable tract, quote, is the concealed stone of many colors, which is born and brought forth in one color. Know this and conceal it, ellipsis. It leads from darkness into light, from this desert wilderness to a secure habitation, and from poverty and straits to a free and ample fortune. I put the PDF link to this book in the description. If you're on my YouTube, that's where this is so far. So you can find it there and find all the footnotes you want, because I'm not going to stop sometimes. Sometimes I'll say quote or ellipsis so that you know something skipped, because you're not seeing it. But otherwise, that's why I put it there, so you can look it up. Man, then, was, for the alchemist, the, quote, true laboratory of the Hermetic art, which concealed in an entanglement of vague and contradictory symbols the life process of his ascension to that perfect state in which he was able to meet God. I'm pausing to say a prayer. You can as well, just that I can be present in this reading, and God will be present. Divine love in all your hearts. This state must not be confused with a merely moral purity, but must be understood as involving utter transmutation into a, quote, new form. It naturally followed from this that the indwelling Christ, the cornerstone, the sun, she wrote it like S-U-N, of righteousness, became for many of the Christian alchemists identified with the lapis philosophorum. I think that's the philosopher's stone. Lapis, and with Sol, S-O-L, which means sun, right? And was regarded both as the image and as the earnest of this great work. His spirit was the, quote, noble tincture, which, quote, can bring that which is lowest in the death to its highest ornament or glory, transmutes the natural to the supernatural, operates the new birth. This, says Boheme, is the noble precious stone. Okay, lapis philosophorum. Okay, the philosopher's stone. Okay, which the magi, or wise men, find which tinctureth nature. So the Magi, it sounds like we're representing all of us, the wise men and us, the wise kings in us that come from the East, that come from the other philosophies into this understanding of what the Philosopher's Stone is. And they bowed at Jesus' feet, and broke their swords. Anyway, I'll read this part again. Okay, so it naturally followed from this that the indwelling Christ, the quote cornerstone, the Son of Righteousness, became for many of the Christian alchemists identified with the lapis philosophorum and with soul, and was regarded both as the image and as the earnest of this quote great work. His spirit was the noble tincture which can bring that which is lowest in the death to its highest ornament or glory, transmutes the natural to the supernatural, operates the quote new birth. This, says Boehm, is the noble precious stone, lapis philosophorum, the philosopher's stone, which the Magi, or wise men, find, which tinctureth nature, and generateth a new sun in the old. He who findeth that esteemeth more highly of it than of this outward world. For the Son is many thousand times greater than the Father. This is just what Boehm is saying. Again, quote, if you take the spirit of the tincture, then indeed you go on a way in which many have found soul, S-O-L, like the sun, but they have followed on the way to the heart of soul, where the spirit of the heavenly tincture hath laid hold on them, and brought them into the liberty, into the majesty, where they have known the noble stone, lapis philosophorum, the philosopher's stone, and have stood amazed at man's blindness, and seen his laboring in vain. Would you fain the noble stone? Would you fain find the noble stone? Behold, we will show it you plain enough, if you be a magus and worthy, else you shall remain blind still. Therefore, fall to work thus, for it hath no more but 3 numbers. First, from 1 till you come to the cross, which is 10. And there lieth the stone, without any great, there's an ellipsis. And there lieth the stone, without any great painstaking, for it is pure and not defiled with any earthly nature. All right, hopefully Evelyn Underhill will go into this more. But a tincture is like a small, if you're like food coloring something, you put 2 drops of food coloring and it changes the whole batter into blue or red or whatever you're making it. We used to make it as kids when I was a cheerleader for our school, so we would put blue in, And so Christ is that. Once you have Christ in you, it changes everything, In this stone, she's quoting again, in this stone there lieth hidden whatsoever God and the eternity, also heaven, the stars and elements contain and are able to do. There never was from eternity anything better or more precious than this, and it is offered by God and bestowed upon man. Every one may have it. It is in a simple form, and hath the power of the whole deity in it. End quote. Boehm, however, is here using alchemic symbols, according to his custom, in a loose and artistic manner. For the true Hermetic philosopher's stone is not something which can be found, but something which must be made. The alchemists, whether their search be for a physical or spiritual tincture, say always that this tincture is the product of the furnace and Athanor, Athanor, it's capital. And further that is composed of 3 numbers or elements, which they call sulfur, salt, and mercury. These, when found and forced into their proper combination, form the azoth, A-Z-O-T-H, or philosopher's egg. The stuff, or first matter of the great work, and great work is capitalized and first matter is too. Sulfur, salt, and mercury, however, must not be understood in too literal a sense. Quote, you need not look for our metallic seed among the elements, says Basil the monk. It need not be sought so far back. If you can only rectify the mercury, sulfur, and salt, understand those of the sages. That's in parentheses. Until the metallic spirit and body are inseparably joined together by means of the metallic soul. You therefore firmly rivet the chain of love and prepare the palace for the coronation. You know, when Jesus left and he spoke mysteriously, he's like, I go, and it's better for you that I go. The Holy Spirit will come, the Comforter, and I go to prepare a house for you, you know? That's just what's coming to mind, this house. But of these three ingredients, the important one is the spiritual principle, the unseizable mercury, which is far from being the metal which we ordinarily know by that name. The mercury which the alchemists sought, often in strange places, is a hidden and powerful substance. They call it, quote, mercury of the wise. And he who can discover it, they say, is on the way towards success. The reader in search of mystical wisdom already begins to be bewildered. But if he perceives in this labyrinth of symbolism, he presently discovers, as Basil the monk indeed hints, that the sulfur and the salt, or, quote, metallic soul and body of the spiritual chemistry, represent something analogous to the body and mind of man. Sulfur, his earthly nature, seasoned with intellectual salt. Jesus talked about you must have salt in your life, you know. The mercury is spirit. He said you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, you know, what's good for it? It's just trampled out. It's just like the sand right here. It's not flavor. It can't flavor things and bring out the flavor or do what it's intended to do anymore, you know? I think without salt, without that, we can't live, you know? All right. So, there's something to that. He didn't just say those words. Jesus wouldn't just say those words for nothing, you know? The mercury is spirit in its most mystic sense. The synteresis, or holy dweller in the innermost, the immanent spark or divine principle of his life. So I'll read that again. The mercury is spirit, she put a capital S. In its most mystic sense, the synteresis, or holy dweller in the innermost, the immanent spark or divine principle of his life. Only the, quote, wise, the mystically awakened, can know this mercury, the agent of man's transmutation. And until it has been discovered, brought out of the hiddenness, nothing can be done. This mercury, or snowy splendor, is a celestial body drawn from the beams of the sun and the moon. It is the only agent in the world for this art. Okay, that was a quote from a book called A Short Inquiry Concerning the Hermetic Art, page 17. I think that's where that's from. The other one, The Golden Tripod of the Monk Basilius Valentis. It's in the Hermetic Museum, Volume 1. Anyway, you can look that up. It is the divine human spark of the soul, the bridge between gold and silver, God and man. Okay, so again, I'll read that again. It is the only agent in the world for this art. It is the divine human, quote, spark of the soul, the bridge between gold and silver, God and man. The three principles being enclosed in the vessel, or athanor, which is man himself, and subjected to a gentle fire, the incendium amoris. I think that's Latin for the fire of love, right? Of God, the divine love fire. This alchemy has to take place. This is why God says, Jesus said, seek first the kingdom of God, and then all these things shall be added to you, and that you will find all this blessedness if you leave all these things, but persecution as well, because our flesh nature doesn't want this alchemy to take place per se, and it holds on, and it's painful as long as we hold on. Just that's a side note. Okay, so The three principles being enclosed in the vessel, or athanor, which is man himself, and subjected to a gentle fire, the incendium amoris, the process of the great work, the mystic transmutation of natural into spiritual man, can begin. And even if you think of when Jesus said, "This is my body and this is my blood," and how the Orthodox and the Roman Catholic and Anglican, to a degree as well, believe that when you take the bread and the wine, which is grain produced by God, and wine is grapes produced by God, but man grows and tills the soil, man gives back his work to God, and then God transmutes that bread, you baked it, and you've grown the grapes and pressed them into wine. God transmutes that into the body and blood of Christ. And Jesus said to do this in remembrance of me. He's showing us this higher consciousness, this transmutation. Now, I still think the most simple person, when they're surrendered to God, is part of this, Jesus said you must be born again. So you don't have to seek all sorts of any kind of occult knowledge, anything like that. That's the temptation. So just stay on the narrow, simple path. And, Mary says it when if you recount how Jesus was born, maybe later in this video I can say that, and what she does, and her Magnificat, and all of that. My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit has rejoiced in God, my Savior. The rich he sent empty away, and the hungry he feeds. If you hunger and thirst for righteousness, you will be filled. Jesus said that, so for sure you will be. All right. This work, like the ingredients which compose it, has three numbers, and the first matter, in the course of its transmutation, assumes three successive colors: the black, the white, and the red. These three colors are strictly analogous to the three traditional stages of the mystic way: purgation, you're cleansing out; illumination; and union. So she had the black, the white, and the red. The alchemists call the first stage, or blackness, putrefaction. It's so weird, because someone was speaking yesterday in a spiritual meeting I was in at a church, but she was talking about composting soil, and the first step is it has to putrefy, but it doesn't smell when it's in the putrefaction phase, and it turns into this rich soil that everything can grow out of. But the alchemists call the first stage, or blackness, putrefaction. It's not a word I hear very often, so it stood out yesterday, right? But God knew I would read this today, I didn't know what was in this. In it, the three principles which compose the whole man of body, soul, and spirit are, quote, sublimated till they appear as a black powder full of corruption, and the imperfect body is dissolved and purified by subtle mercury. As man is purified by the darkness, misery, and despair which follows the emergence of his spiritual consciousness. As psychic uproar and disorder seems part of the process of mental growth, so solve et coagula, coagula. Break down that you may build up is the watchword of the spiritual alchemist. The black beast, the quote black beast, the passional, Passional element of the lower nature must emerge and be dealt with before anything further can be done. There is a black beast in our forests, says the highly allegorical Book of Lambspring. His name is putrefaction. His blackness is called the head of the raven. When it is cut off, whiteness appears. Okay, so that is in that book, the Hermetic Museum. This whiteness, the state of Luna, that's the moon, or silver, the quote chaste and immaculate queen, is the equivalent of the illuminative way, the highest point which the mystic can attain, short of union with the absolute. So the highest you can go before you have union with God. And Teresa of Avila in her Interior Castle, and St. John of the Cross in the Ascent to Mount Carmel both talk about how this union. They draw a map out of how this union happens, right? So we're not left without roadmaps, without very clear ones. And so you don't have to, because some people that are evil or whatever will take these same words like silver or symbols and put them into all sorts of heresies. So you have to test the spirits. I read that this morning as well. That's in 1 John 4, if you want to know. And John is saying you must test the spirits to see whether they're true. And if they don't, he said, if they don't listen to what we're saying, we are from God. If they don't listen to what we're saying, then that's a way you can test them. They're not true. It's just, anyway. Also, if they don't say that Christ came in the flesh. But this white stone is pure and precious, but in it, the great work of man's spiritual evolution has not yet reached its term. That term is the attainment of the red, the color of perfection, or alchemic gold, a process sometimes called the marriage of Luna and soul, the fusion of the human and divine spirit. It's so weird because I have a friend, and I think I took a picture of his tattoo. He has the sun and the moon combining, and I don't even know if he knows why he has that, but I know why we're friends now. Because this is the alchemic thing that's happening in me, because I'm doing my best to keep searching for the true path and to be in it, to know it, to trust that God is leading me on it, and to let go of all else. Seek first the kingdom of God, and then all these other things will be added to you as well. Because what else do you need? Jesus said that. What does a man profit if he loses his soul, if he gains the whole world but loses his soul? And Kierkegaard talks about that for a long time in Either Or. He says, and what have you lost if you gain your soul? And what have you lost if you've lost the world, If you don't have those other things, And you've, okay, so she calls it, so she's reading, red, the color of perfection, or alchemic gold, a process sometimes called the marriage of Luna and soul, the fusion of the human and divine spirit. Right? So it's not about worshiping the sun or worshiping the moon or any of this weird stuff. It's just recognizing that, divine love created and it was good. And then God became man so that man could become God. It's called theosis. That's a quote from the Orthodox. And so if man is just represented symbolically by these mystic with symbols as the moon, and God is represented like the sun, then it's the merging of the two into one. Under this image is concealed the final secret of the mystic life, that ineffable union of the finite and infinite, that loving reception of the inflowing vitality of God, from which comes forth the magnum opus, deified or spiritual man. Like that I was saying, theosis. Deified or spiritual man. This, says the author of A Suggestive Inquiry, is the union supersentient, the nuptial sublime, mentis et universi. It's Latin again. Lo, and I always encourage you, if you know Latin, to write that down for us in the comments. mentis et universi. It's right here. If you want to see this paragraph, it's amazing. Lo, behold, I will open to thee a mystery, cries the adept. The bridegroom crowneth the bride of the north, i.e., she who comes out of the cold and darkness of the lower nature. Interesting. Okay, in the darkness of the north, out of the crucifixion of the cerebral life, when the sensual dominant is occultated in the divine fiat and subdued, there arises a light wonderfully about the summit, which wisely returned and multiplied according to the divine blessing is made substantial in life. This is by, I don't know, A Suggestive Inquiry. It says a tract, alchemic tract called Hunting the Green Lion is printed in full. Anyway, and if you find these resources, the ones that I'm naming, then you can put those here too. not weird ones, or I'll delete it unless, it's something helpful to this. But I might not have all the time to search through that. So everybody use your discernment. It's just depending on if thousands of comments come in the future. Right now I can. I have said that side by side with the metallic and planetary language of the alchemist runs a strange heraldic symbolism in which they take refuge when they fear, generally without reason, that they are telling their secrets too plainly to an unregenerate world. I understand that. Many of these heraldic emblems are used in an utterly irresponsible manner, and whilst doubtless conveying a meaning to the individual alchemist and the disciples for whom he wrote, are and must ever be unintelligible to other men. But others are of a more general application, and appear so frequently in 17th century literature, whether mystical or non-mystical, that some discussion of them may well be of use. Perhaps the quaintest and most celebrated of all these allegories is that which describes the quest of the Philosopher's Stone as the hunting of the green lion. The green lion, though few would divine it, is the first matter of the great work. Hence, in spiritual alchemy, natural man, in his wholeness, salt, sulfur, and mercury in their crude state, he is called green because, seen from the transcendent standpoint, he is still unripe, like a banana. His latent powers undeveloped, and a lion because of his strength, fierceness, and virility. That makes sense. I understand that. Here, the common opinion that a pious effeminacy, a diluted and amiable spirituality, is the proper raw material of the mystic life, is emphatically contradicted. So it doesn't mean you have to be weak. You're like a lion with your passions, and green because it's unripe. This godness, God put a spark in you. I'm just understanding it now. And so you have to learn. Someone taught me it's like if you're lust, there's nothing wrong with the word lust is like passion, but you have to, it's like 6 wild stallions, and if you learn to direct it, it brings you to high places. But if it's wild, then it's like 6 wild horses going every direction, and it's not used for good. It's used just to drag you around like a horse would drag you on the ground, So anyway, it's not by the education of the lamb, but by the hunting and taming of the wild and tractable lion, instinct with vitality, full of ardor and courage, love and courage, exhibiting heroic qualities on the sensual plane, that the great work is achieved. The lives of the saints enforce the same law. Okay, so watch, St. John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila and Julian of Norwich and Mathilde of Magdeburg they're all passionate, very passionate people, So anyway, I'll read this quote. I didn't know this was coming. Our lion, wanting maturity, is called green for his unripeness, trust me. And yet, full quickly he can run, and soon can overtake the sun. Oh, that's so beautiful. That's from that same book. It's, look, here, I'll show you the sun again. It's behind the clouds, but nevertheless, there, I like having it in the shot, but I can't do everything here today. Oh no, whatever. That's not, anyway, this is what happens when I mess with the stand. All right, so let's go back to, understand this lion again, and the sun is union with God. So when this ripe lion turns golden, becomes one with the sun, I don't want to mix our metaphor. Oh, all right. The green lion, then, in his strength and wholeness, is the only creature potentially able to attain perfection. It needs the adoption and purification of all the wealth and resources of man's nature, not merely the encouragement of his transcendental tastes, if he is to overtake it and achieve the great work. This is so awesome to me. Like someone's just running over there. It's like that. It's like all your passions, they must be used. and you have to like give them up to God in a way. But it's not just some transcendental, let's think about this. The lion power must be used. God put it in us for a reason, right? The kingdom of heaven is taken by violence, not by amiable aspiration. Quote, the green lion, says one alchemist, is the priest by whom Sol and Luna are wed. Wow. So the green lion is like the priest, which marries the sun and the moon, brings, God works this in us, but we are walking towards this or walking away from it, Did you hear that guy on the bike just now? He just said whether the beauty is a painting or a woman or a horse. He just said that. He sounded like he had an Italian accent. Or a horse. I do not, maybe it was an Italian, maybe someone. Anyway, so anyway, I won't say what kind of matrix we're in. These kinds of things happen to me all the time. I hope you heard him, so you know that I wasn't just making that conversation up. But I don't have to prove anything. Watch in your own life. Be an observer. Be an observer. The green lion, says one alchemist, is the priest by whom Sol and Luna are wed. In other words, the raw stuff of indomitable human nature is the means by which man is to attain union with the absolute. The duty of the alchemist, then, the transmuting process, is described as the hunting of the green lion through the forest of the sensual world. He, like the hound of heaven, is on a love chase down the nights and down the days. And if you want to listen to that, I read it and I didn't know why I was reading it and putting it on my YouTube, but it's there. It's there. It's on my Instagram as well, and it has a hound on it, just so people could find it. I didn't mean to just put cartoons, but so you can listen to that. And I was taught that you have to read it out loud or listen to it at least 3 times to begin to understand a real poem. Oh, there's a dog. There's not supposed to be dogs on this beach. They're not allowed, right as we're talking about the hound of heaven, though he chased me down the labyrinthian ways, through the mist of tears, that those strange feet that followed after. All things betray thee, which betrayest thou me. And at the end is so beautiful. It's like everything that you let go of. Francis Thompson shows. He's like, you took it from me just so that I could find it in your own hands. That you could have this union, and then you don't need anything else. It's so touching. Sorry. I don't need to apologize. So profound and so touching and so beautiful. And what I'm talking about, that it is this union with this tender, the love of God that always wants to love you. Behold, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. So keep seeking God as he is seeking you. God is beyond he and she. Anyway, he, like the hound of heaven, is on a love chase down the nights and down the days. When the lion is caught, when destiny overtakes it, as the preliminary to the necessary taming process, its head must be cut off. It is called by the alchemists the head of the raven, the crow, or the vulture for its blackness. The head of this lion has to be cut off. It's not the hound, it's like the head of this lion. The Nemean lion is in the Hercules story, I think. And sometimes if you don't cut it off, if then more heads grow out, if it's like, oh, I'm going to cut off this passion. I think, or Jeff or someone said, my brother told me, he said, yeah, if you stop smoking, the vice will show up a different way unless you're surrendered to divine love and it becomes transmuted, I don't know, just watch for that, If you're just trying to get rid of, a vice so that, I can get rid of that. But don't, nevertheless, well, I heard the best way is to withdraw your energy from it, and obviously Jesus said how to do that too. He said, you can't just sweep the house clean or else that thing will go out and get 7 more and try to attack you and bring it back. You have to fill it with the Holy Spirit. You have to fill the house. And like other people say, in psychology and stuff, I'm a psychologist, so with good habits and, replace it with that, anyway. When the lion is caught, when destiny overtakes it, as a preliminary to the necessary taming process, its head must be cut off. This is called by the alchemist the head of the raven, the crow, or the vulture, for its blackness. It represents the fierce and corrupt life of the passions, and its removal is that, quote, death of the lower nature, which is the object of all asceticism, i.e. purgation. The lion, the whole man, humanity in its strength, as it were, slain to the world, and then resuscitated, right? This resurrection takes place, but in a very different shape. This is why the butterfly is used, It was a caterpillar and has to become the butterfly. It was metamorphosis. Even the word for repentance is metanoia, metamorphosis of your nous, your higher mind. It's to turn away from your lower mind to the higher mind. Repentance is necessary. It's not just, I say the word, I repent. It's turning away from this lion. And anyway, it says, then resuscitated, but in a very different shape. By its passage through this mystic death, or the putrefaction of the three principles, the color of unripeness is taken away, its taming completed. It receives wings, wherewith it may fly up to Sol, S-O-L, that means the sun, the perfect or divine, and is transmuted, say the alchemists, into the red dragon. This, of course, to us, a hopelessly grotesque image, but to the Hermetic philosophers, whose sense of wonder was yet uncorrupt, it was the deeply mystical emblem of a new, strange, and transcendental life, powerful alike in earth and in heaven. As the angel to the man, so was the dragon to the world of beasts, a creature of splendor and terror, a super brute, veritably existent, if seldom seen. We may perhaps realize something of the significance of this symbol for the alchemic writers, if we remember how sacred a meaning it has for the Chinese, to whom it is the traditional emblem of free spiritual life. As the tiger represents the life of the material plane in its intensest form. Wow. So the tiger represents the life of the material plane in its intensest form. Since it is from China that the practice of alchemy is supposed to have reached the European world, it may yet be found that the red dragon is one of the most antique and significant symbols of Hermetic art. So she's just talking about mysticism and symbolism right now, too. For the spiritual chemistry, then, the red dragon represents deified man, whose emergence must always seem like the birth of some monstrous and amazing creature when seen from the standpoint of the merely natural world. With his coming forth, the business of the alchemist, insofar as he be a mystic, is done. Man has transcended his lower nature, has received wings wherewith to live on higher levels of reality. The tincture, the latent goldness, has been found and made dominant, the magnum opus achieved. That the true and inward business of that work, when stripped of its many emblematic veils, was indeed the reordering of spiritual rather than material elements, is an opinion which rests on a more solid foundation than personal interpretations of old allegories and alchemic tracts. The Norwich physician, himself deeply read in the Hermetic science, has declared to us his own certainty concerning it in a few but lovely words. In them is contained the true mystery of man's eternal and interior quest of the stone, its reconciliation with that other outgoing quest of, quote, the hidden treasure that desires to be found. Jesus spoke of it as a hidden treasure in a field. And once a man found it, he sold everything to buy that field, Or the person who knows pearls, who's a pearl seller, found a pearl of great price, recognized it, and sold everything that he could buy that pearl, The person with the land hid the treasure in that land. And the land is like yourself. But let's see what she's going to quote, right? From Sir Thomas Browne. He says, do but extract from the corpulency of bodies, or resolve things beyond their first matter, and you discover the habitation of angels, which, if I call it the ubiquitary and omnipresent essence of God, I hope I shall not offend divinity. Okay, I'm going to read that again. Do but extract from the corpulency of bodies, or resolve things beyond their first matter, and you discover the habitation of angels, which, if I call it the ubiquitary and omnipresent essence of God, I hope I shall not offend divinity. So she's saying, that he expresses it quite well, that the whole theosis in that way. And that's the end of this chapter, and so I'm going to wrap this up a little early, 15 minutes early or so. Maybe it'll go a little bit longer, because the next chapter I'll just show you is, so sometimes I say take a screenshot because this is free, 1910, so it's free copyright now, but it's Mysticism and Magic, chapter 7. And so right here, that first paragraph, is she's talking about, she talks about what she's going to talk about. I'm going to read it. Persistence of occultism, it accompanies mystical activity, is often confused with mystical activity, it is a serious philosophy. Its claims stated and criticized its limits. It does not attain the absolute. It infuses all religion and some science. It is based on psychological laws. Its aim is to enlarge man's universe. Its method is enhancement of the will. Modern magic, quote, new thought, the doctrines of magic, Eliphas Levi, Hermes Trismegistus, 3 occult dogmas, the astral light, antiquity of this idea, the cosmic memory, the universal agent, the power of the will, occult education, a remaking of character, magic ceremonies, agents of will enhancement, addressed to the subconscious mind, value of liturgy, symbols, they are instruments of self-suggestion. A, they're instruments of self-suggestions. B, autoscopes. 3, the doctrine of analogy. Its breadth of application in mysticism, in art, abnormal power of the trained will over the body, in religion, in producing transcendental consciousness, mental healing, purely magical, attitude of occultism to suffering, the pure theory of magic, its defects, its influence on character, magic and religion, the occult elements in Christianity, ceremonial religion, largely magical. This is necessarily so. The inner and the outer church, the church of mysticism and the church of magic. So the word magic, magus, just means powerful. So she's not encouraging you to become a magician of sorts, but people, if you just said, oh yes, Jesus said, eat this is my body and blood, and do likewise, and as the disciples talked about communion, they would say that's magic, that's transmuted into something else. And so, when you try to manipulate something, or, go to some occult thing to try to grasp things in a way that's not ordained by God, then that can be your egotism turning into spiritual things, and that gets very, very dangerous and dark. And believe me, I never meant to go down that path, but I've experienced a lot of this from different ways that I just stumbled on accident, but thank God I've been brought back, and I just renounce anything that's not. But no, whatever stage you're in, I'm not judging at all, okay? And so that's why we're bringing clarity to this, because I wish I had read this, 20 years ago and understood it. So that's why I'm taking the time to address it on my YouTube channel, or wherever if this is going to turn into a podcast later, or a class or something. This is the beginning seeds right now. I wish you so much love. I appreciate you being here. Share this with like-minded people, or with other people that can benefit from it. That grows my channel, and it makes this more widely accessible to other people, because I don't pay for ads right now, and I haven't done at all on YouTube. So I just want it to go to those to whom it's meant to go to, and whom it'll benefit, so that's the whole world. No, not everybody is at the readiness to hear this. So anyway, I wish you so much love. Thank you for your time. I honor your presence here.